So today is the 24th of September 2025, and usually on the 24th of September I launch hashtag Dry by Christmas to remind women to do their pelvic floor exercises, because there's evidence that if a woman with stress incontinence does her pelvic floor exercises 3 times a day for 3 months, she'll get dry, like she doesn't need to do anything else. So I start on the 24th of September and remind you every day, and then hopefully by Christmas Eve you go, hooray, now I'm dry, that's great. And if you don't, then it means that you need to come into clinic, we need to sort something else out. It doesn't mean that you can't be helped. I've done it for a few years. It's always a bit Heath Robinson because I am full of good intentions and have no tech skills whatsoever. So this year I thought, right, I'm going to run it properly. I'm going to do all these posts in advance, and I'm going to be able to, you can schedule posts, it's not that difficult to do. And I had said that I would put a video out today. And I did do a video, and I've been editing the video, and I don't know what I've done to it, but I've completely messed it up. And it's getting kind of late, so I thought, well, I'll just re-record it, which is fine. But I'm told that you have to do things like, you know, get your lighting right and check your background, preferably brush your hair. And I've had quite a busy day, and I've been moving furniture around, and the choice is either, you know, pretend there's not chaos in my life, or just get on with it and do the video. So if anything, I think this just demonstrates that I really need some help to get this project up and running, because me and tech, we're not friends. So also, I said, oh, I don't know, maybe a week ago, maybe a bit more, that I was going to do this, and I was going to run this fundraiser. And then yesterday, I think yesterday, it was the night before, it was late the night before, I did a tweet and I put up a link saying, you know, if anybody wants, this is what I'm going to do, if anybody donates, I'd be very grateful. And I'm really, I mean, you hear people saying I'm blown away, but I actually am, because I haven't even done anything yet, and lots of very nice people have chucked some money in the pot, which I am very grateful for. I've had some really lovely messages and offers of practical help, so, you know, I just feel quite good about it. It's really lovely, because I would do it anyway, but it's going to be a lot easier if I can outsource the stuff that I'm, you know, bad at. It's going to be a lot more effective. I can do the content, but I can't manage videos. Anyway, so the reason that I am doing this is because I see an awful lot of women in clinic. I'm a pelvic health physio. Fanny Physio does exactly what it says in the tin. So I see a lot of women in clinic who have got an issue that's really worrying them, but actually it's not that big a deal. It's that they don't understand what's going on, that, you know, this is manageable, and what they need is reassurance and some information. And I also see lots of women who have delayed coming to clinic, and they have got symptoms that are really significant, that are really interfering with their life and bothersome, and they have put up with them for a long, long time because they didn't know that that wasn't normal, or they didn't know that there was help available. And both of these things really irritate me. A lot of women's health issues could really be easily solved if women were listened to by, you know, healthcare systems. And if we could access adequate information and advice that was actually evidence-based instead of myths and nonsense, which is what you'll get if you know, go on Reddit for information. So it occurred to me, how would life be if it was men who were in this situation, right? Good feminist, always ask the question, what would it be like if it was a man? So imagine the scenario. There is a survey done, and it turns out that 50% of men in the UK aren't very sure about which is their penis and which is their testicle. And the consequences of this are that they don't have the language to be able to describe their problem when they go to a GP, so they don't go. And some of those men think that they've got, you know, a minor issue, like a little bit of thrush, that they buy some treatment for over the counter for months and months and months because, well, surely it'll go away if they just give it enough thrush treatment. But it turns out that, in fact, the problem is they don't know the symptoms of penile cancer, and by the time that it's found, they need to have their genitals removed to save their lives. There would be an outcry, right? If there was a survey done that found that this was a common issue, like not unusual amongst men, then there would be a campaign to educate them. There would be hashtags, there would be, you know, articles in the newspapers. The celebrity men would be falling over themselves to go on daytime TV to encourage men to check their todgers, and something would be done. So, in 2019, a YouGov survey found that half of women in the UK weren't very sure about which is their vulva and which is their vagina. Now, I don't know, have you seen a big public health campaign to address that issue? Because I haven't. And the interesting thing about the survey is they asked a variety of people, they asked people of both sexes, but they didn't ask the women who weren't sure about what was in their vulva, whether they could identify a penis or a testicle. And this is an assumption on my part, this isn't science, but I'm going to guess that 100% of those women would be able to do that. Even if they personally weren't that interested in male genitals, I think most women would be able to differentiate between penises and testicles, which means that, if that was true, that women in the UK know more about men's bodies than their own. And I just don't like men being better at stuff than women, so we have to sort this out, right? In 1971, a bunch of women in Boston got fed up with not being able to get decent information about their own bodies, so they wrote a book as a collective called Our Bodies, Ourselves, and in it says, our bodies are our own and we have the right to understand them. Now that hasn't changed since 1971, but those women must be really disappointed with the way that women's health literacy remains so low in Western countries. So for instance, some stats. Around 8.5% of women have got a lump or a bulge in their vagina that they know about, that they're not going to see their GP about. So only about, that's not quite true actually, I've messed that up. So 8.5% of women have got a lump or a bump, but somewhere between 10 and 20% of those women will then go and see their GP. The rest of them just tolerate having a lump or a bump and think, oh well, that must be what happens. But some lumps and bumps need to be seen sooner rather than later. You don't know whether that lump is, you know, an infected cyst or a skin tag or a prolapse or cancer. Like, women with these symptoms should be able to go and get that looked at. Of the women that have got a lump or a bump, when they are looked at, about half of them it's vaginal prolapse, because about half of women have got vaginal prolapse. And the NICE guidelines are very clear about the management of prolapse, which is, if a prolapse is so problematic, it's so bothersome that it's interfering with this woman's life, then it should be referred on to gynecology. And that means that there is no care pathway for managing asymptomatic prolapses. Now, I have a problem with this. It means that if you go for a smear test and the nurse observes that you've got a prolapse, because not all of them cause symptoms, then there isn't a mechanism whereby you are told you should, if you do your pelvic floor exercise, like what it is for a start. Nobody explains to you what a prolapse actually is. It's just like when organs shift because they're not getting supported properly. We will talk about this later on, but so your bladder, your vagina and your uterus, if you've still got one, and your rectum can shift inside your pelvic cavity because they're not being properly supported. And if they lean into your vaginal vault, into the space of your vagina, then you can feel a lump or a bump, dragging feeling. And it's dead common. So what we know though is that if women do their pelvic floor exercises, if they don't get constipated, if they manage their bowels, if they try and lose some weight, if they're overweight, and they change some lifestyle stuff, then they can manage their prolapse for years, years and years and years. Which is a good thing, because eventually, some prolapses need surgery. So if you can delay surgery by managing your symptoms really well, that's a good thing, right? But we don't do that in the UK. We leave your prolapse to get worse and worse until the whole thing falls out and you're dragging your cervix along behind you, and then we refer you to a nice surgeon to tack it back up. That's just not good care, right? So if the whole thing's like illogical, if we know that pelvic floor exercises can sort out 3/4 of women who have got stress incontinence within 3 months, then why are 1 in 3 women in the UK wetting themselves? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And of the ones that pelvic floor exercises won't work for, then if they come into clinic, 6 sessions of physio has got an 83% cure rate. Like, the streets should not be awash. We should not have all these women worrying because they have got leaking. It bothers me a bit that there's never been like a national clench campaign. There's nothing being done about this, and the reason for that is simple misogyny. There is no other explanation for it, and I know that because, for instance, if you look at sexual function, the male orgasm is really well understood. Science has done quite a lot of research into what an erection is, what the physiology of it is, what the mechanics of it are. Female orgasm, they haven't even agreed on a definition. Like, the literature is really thin and the methodology is very, very poor. They don't know anything about us and our sexual pleasure, which shows. So, for instance, if a man has got erectile dysfunction and he goes to speak to his doctor about it, they have the choice of 5 different types of medication to help him, which is a good thing, right? Because we don't want men being miserable. If their willies stop working, it does seem to bother them. I'm being flippant, but it is a serious issue. So I'm glad that science has looked at this problem and developed 5 different types, not 5 brand names, 5 different types of medication to try and restore his ability to get an erection. So how many different types of medication do you think there are for women's sexual dysfunction? Now, it's not none. There is one. And if you take it every single day in a month, it will gain you approximately half an extra orgasm a month. But it won't work if you have any body issues, any body image issues, if you have any relationship issues, if you have low mood, or if you have menopausal symptoms or pelvic floor dysfunctions, which basically rules out every single middle-aged woman that this medication is designed to help. And if you take it and drink alcohol, then it'll probably give you a stroke. So I'm going to say that that's less than ideal. And the NHS agrees, which is why you can't get this medication in the UK. So I'm not going to say that pink Viagra is the straw that broke my camel's back. Like, my camels have been lugging cabers around for quite some time. They're quite sturdy. But it does make me wonder, like, when are we going to get investment into women's sexual function, into women's, pelvic health? And when are we going to see a campaign to actually address these issues that are largely preventable, manageable, or curable? We accept that 43% of women avoid situations, including exercise, in case they leak. About 12% of all women just buy pads and shut up. 3/4 of them never seek help. They never speak to their GP. And about 1 in 5 women are too embarrassed to talk about their genitals to their GP. Like, this is an issue. Women die because they're too ashamed to show their fanny to a doctor. It's not okay. We allow women's lives to be limited by common conditions that are very well understood and often quite easy to manage. but just don't bother to address it. And I don't think that that's very nice, unless you're a society that doesn't mind women suffering. So it bothers me. So for years and years and years, I've been wanging on at various, professional bodies and budget holders and anybody that I can to try and encourage to do some outreach on women's pelvic health. I have petitioned, I have rallied, I've presented in all the parliaments. I wrote 2 comedy shows about it, which won awards and got 5 stars. So I have been persistent, consistent and insistent, and I've failed. I've achieved nothing. However, it's been an interesting 15 years because I have seen women around me who have no time and no money and no resources build amazing things for the benefit of other women. So I guess it's my turn, and that's what this is. So Get a Grip is a workshop that'll come out in video and on Substack. So I'll put videos up and I'll put the transcripts up and I'll give you resources, information. I'll do 1 a week. There's 12 sections and each section covers an aspect of women's health, so that if you watch it or read it, then you will know what normal is. You can recognise if your normal is not actually normal. You'll know what to try to manage things and improve things yourself, and you'll know how to seek help if you decide that you want it. So the sections that we're going to look at is what is a pelvic floor? How do you do a squeeze? Overactive pelvic floors, bladders, bowels, prolapse, pregnancy, birth injury and postnatal issues, menopause, vulval care, what if it doesn't work, and does any of this matter? So by the end, you'll have the knowledge that you need to look after your own body, and you'll have resources to help you access help if that's the next steps for you. I'll produce things that you can download, so you'll be able to access a bladder diary, a bowel diary, a Bristol stool chart, which is a way of measuring how soft your poo is. Constipation's a big problem. I'll give you a pain diary, a how to ask for help sheet. I've got some marvellous fanny origami to remind you about doing your pelvic floor exercises, and I'll also put together all the references. So if you've got a job where you need to do CPD, then you can, if you watch the videos, you can claim the time as self-directed learning. So do that, because you might as well. And the aim of the 12 weeks is to arm women with knowledge, because we need to fight this patriarchal system that's denying us, a good time, a decent orgasm. It's the patriarchy's fault that your orgasms are rubbish, and pelvic floor exercises are the answer. And I think a lot about, Andrea Dworkin saying about feminism is for all women, and this information is for all women. So what I want to build, what I want to use the money from the fundraiser for, is to build an online hub, so that any woman, if she's got internet access, can click on it and get evidence-based information about what she can do to help herself and how to know if something is normal or not. It's going to be quite big, but I think it's important because at the moment, if women search their symptoms looking for help and answers, they typically get information from porn sites, because the way that the SEO works for these big sites is they mimic medical sites, and generally speaking, that's not helpful information that women are gleaning. Or if they manage to avoid the porn, then they get information from people that are really, really good at marketing but don't actually know what they're talking about. They don't actually have any qualifications or ability to read a research paper. So there's an awful lot of myths in women's health, and those all need to get eradicated. So I want to do that. I want to build that so it's like a one-stop shop. And also, by doing that, then I would hope that it could have some influence on the 2,000 years of shame and stigma and taboos that surround women's genitals. They're just a bit of your body. If you understand what your elbow is, you should be able to understand what your vulva is. It's just a bit. And if it if it's working really well, it can make your life a lot easier and a lot better. I also want to, with that hub and trying to, get a sensible approach into managing women's health, is to give information for professionals. So healthcare professionals, fitness professionals and exercise professionals. I would love for there to be a women's health physio in every street corner, because I'm quite evangelical. But the reality is there's only about 2,500 fanny physios in the UK. Well, we don't actually know, because there's not a comprehensive registration system. So there might be more. It's probably quite helpful if we find that out, but well, that's not my job to do. However, there's upwards of 80,000 fit pros or exercise professionals, and often women that are a bit leaky or have got problems with the pelvic floor, they don't come to physio because they don't know that we exist. They'll end up going to Pilates and yoga and to gyms, and a lot of what those instructors and teachers are doing is really, really good, really helpful, but it's quite hard for them to access basic information about being female. If they do add-on training, it's usually confined to like courses that they would do on pregnancy, postnatal and menopause, but women are female every day, not just when you're pregnant or menopausal. It's not rocket science to think, well, if you're training this woman, maybe she's got different needs from training a man, but most of the actual information that the courses are all based on men's data. So I want to do something about that, frankly, because there's an awful lot of women that I see whose prolapses are caused by doing exercises that just were never going to be appropriate for them. A lot of women drop out of exercise classes because they're doing jumping jacks and planks and it makes them wet themselves, so they don't go back. But coronary heart disease is the most common cause of premature death in industrialised countries for women. So we need to move, but we don't if we're wetting ourselves. This isn't rocket science, this is completely obvious. So I want to have courses to train people up on the common sense stuff, that if they knew that, we would all have, better health. The cost of not doing something about this are huge. Now, we don't have much data in the UK about the costs of pelvic floor dysfunctions because the government just doesn't collate it. But in Australia, the Continence Foundation of Australia did a huge bit of work in 2010, and they've just repeated it, where they calculated the total costs of incontinence to their public purse, and it's just shy of $100 billion. Not million, billion. $100 billion a year spent on managing incontinence and its consequences. Because it's not just pads and surgery and medication, like it impacts your mood, it's linked with falls in the elderly. There's a whole series of things that happen if somebody is leaky. And Britain and Australia have got similar health challenges. So although we don't have data in Britain, I think it's reasonable to extrapolate the Australian figures for here, because our societies are very similar. And also there are conveniently about 2 Australian citizens for every British citizen. This is very rough. And there's also roughly, the other way around, 2 British citizens for every Australian citizen. And if you have got £1, the exchange rate is you roughly get about $2 Australian in exchange. So I'm no health economist, but it seems to me with my, back of an envelope calculation that we should assume that as a conservative estimate, incontinence costs the UK public purse about £100 billion a year. So I think that's how I can get the attention of the politicians, because they don't care that much about women, otherwise something would have been done about this before, but they will care about $100 billion, pounds. A lot of that money can be saved just by educating women. So if we know that 3/4 of women with pelvic floor problems that have got stress incontinence can get dry just by running Dry by Christmas, then what if we did it nationally and ran it out? Maybe we could save billions and billions of pounds. And also it would improve women's orgasms. And I don't know how interested Wes Streeton is personally in women's orgasms, probably not very. But it's a vote winner, right? Labour's in trouble. It's probably worth vote for me. See, the adage that I think it was Carol Hanisch said, the personal is political. You don't get much more personal than fannies, and there's a lot of politics in women's health. And we are 51% of the population, so we should be paid attention to. So my aim is to teach women what normal is. So what is normal peeing, normal pooing, and normal sexual function. And try and push budget holders to cough up more than the current 2.4% that we get in funding for research purely for women's health issues. So like that 2.4% has to cover everything that, you know, all menstrual disorders, so anything to do with endometriosis comes out that pot, anything to do with breastfeeding, anything to do with pregnancy, anything to do with menopause, 2.4%. I think we're worth more than that because there's so many gaps in the knowledge. If we could tidy all of that up, then maybe women would be more active and we would have fewer costs from coronary issues in women later on in life. So if you think that this project is worth supporting, then I have Substack and a Ko-fi account that you can donate to that I'm very grateful for. It's going to be really helpful actually. But part of the point of this fundraiser is to try and get proof of concept. So if you can't donate, then obviously that's totally fine. But if you could like or share it, and when I put out, I'm going to give like draft letters to send to your elected representatives to try and get funding to sort all of this out because it is a political issue. So if you could consider sharing that, then that would be fine. But really, clicks and shares and likes and all of that stuff is helpful because it shows that there's an interest that this approach works, and I can use that to leverage to try and get investment. So, because the aim is to, you know, change the world one fanny at a time. And some women said once upon a time about deeds not words being important in feminism, and I think that's a very useful and succinct thing to bear in mind. So to that end, you should go and do your pelvic floor exercises right now, shouldn't you? Deeds not words. So thank you very much. Get a Grip is go, and Drive By Christmas is also go, and we'll see how I get on. It's going to be a bit Heath Robinson because honestly the video that I did was brilliant actually. I was really pleased with it, but goodness knows where I've lost it somehow. Tech. It just demonstrates that I need some help, right? So thanks very much for your time. It's half an hour. Like, it's supposed to be 4 minutes, but I'm not doing it again. So click, share, like, all the stuff that the professionals say. You know what you need to do. I'll tidy up the room for the next video and I'll do my hair, and it'll be a lot flasher, it'll be a lot better. See ya. Thank you.